All right, so yeah, my name is Jelte. Thanks for having me. It's my first time at Geomob as well. Just a little bit of background before I dive into navvy. Let me take you back to 2014. 2014 is when I found myself in the middle of the Pacific on a 70-foot sailboat. The wind was howling, the boat heeled over at a 40-degree angle, slamming through 3-meter-high waves. And I was down below, desperately trying and quite frankly failing to find the best route down to Panama. I'd taken a sabbatical from my time at Google, where at the time I was working, to take part in the Clip Around the World yacht race. That's our boat, Jamaica Get All Right. And I sailed from San Francisco through Panama to New York, over 5,000 nautical miles. And I'm very proud to say we finished on the podium in one of the races. I should also add that if anybody says that they finish on the podium, that means they're third, because if you win, you say you win, and if you're second, you're second, and otherwise you just say you're on the podium. But nonetheless, we got on the podium, so I'm pretty glad about that. But the thing, even though I've sailed all my life, the thing about the race that really opened my eyes was the realization how outdated the sailing navigation tools are compared to anything land-based. If you use Google Maps or Trail Router or any other routing software on land, within seconds you get all the information you need, right? Google Maps can tell me to avoid the M3 because there's traffic there and give me the best route to where I want to go. Whereas at sea, sailors have to do all of this stuff manually, effectively. They typically use 4 or 5 different apps to plot their routes. One for the charts to know where the hazards are, one for the wind, one for the storms and the actual weather, one for the tides. The tides will affect where I'm going, understanding their own boat performance. And they switch between these apps back and forth to find the best and safest route. And one of the reasons they do this is obviously if you make a mistake, well, mistakes can be deadly, right? There's no AA to come rescue you. If you run aground, you can be in serious problems. So it's also very intimidating. And it frustrated me because I was working in Google and obviously I'm come from a tech background, and none of this should really be going on, right? Tech should be helping you for a lot of this stuff. If in Google Maps I can drop a pin and within a few seconds I know where I need to go, the same should hold true for the sea, right? But it doesn't. So I decided to leave Google in 2017 and set up navvy, the solution to all of these problems. And I've been told by Ed that one of the things that work well here is screenshots. So here's a screenshot of navvy. As you can tell, we're focused on the land. So yes, we do use OpenStreetMap and we love the project, but obviously the sea is where sailors are at, and the data that we need for that is coming from hydrographic offices. So that's the blue that you see there. Those are shallow areas. White is deeper areas. The pink lines, for those of you who've never sailed before, they're called TSS, traffic separation schemes. Basically shipping lanes. It's where the big boats go and where you probably don't want to go when you're sailing, or at least you want to know how to get through it. And in this particular screenshot, we're also showing what the tide is doing. So how is the water flowing at that particular time? So as I said, sailors tend to have 4 to 5 different apps. 4 to 5 different apps that they switch between. And one of the tasks that we set ourselves at navvy is to bring that all in one easy to use solution and one that can work offline as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So to start with, we need the charts. We need the data from hydrographic offices around the world to know where the hazards are, where's the shallows, reefs, coral reefs, shipwrecks, things that are just below the surface of the water, but also buoys and shipping lanes, the things I just showed you a second ago. We need tidal information. We have tidal information from over 8,000 ports around the world to tell you exactly what the tide is doing. And that isn't always as simple as, well, there's a high at 3 o'clock and a low at whatever time. In some places, like here in Poole, where I am, there's double highs and sometimes double lows, and it gets very tricky. So knowing exactly what the water is doing at a particular time is crucial for plotting your routes. Wind, weather. We go sailing for the fun of it. So this example here shows Wednesday, 7 knots of wind with rain. We might decide we don't go out sailing today and we wait for tomorrow. Again, having that in one place combined with the tide and the charts is really what users want to see. And of additional features, here's just one. We have a whole bunch of others, but satellite information overlaid with the chart information. So if I'm in a place where an anchorage might potentially be tricky to get to, or there's coral reefs or something that isn't perhaps on the chart, you can overlay the satellite imagery and see exactly what is going on. Obviously not real time, but you get the idea. So aside from providing all this data in one place, the one thing, and I'm glad people indeed have asked for routing, that we do is a routing algorithm, right? So getting from A to B, we've seen in a few examples of this now. So here's us calculating the distance from Dunkirk to the UK. And it's not as simple as the crow flies. Obviously, if I'm on a boat, there's shallows that I want to avoid. So we know what your boat preferences are, and we can tell you, okay, well, if you want to know the distance, you have to go around that particular shallow over there. So instead of 50 nautical miles, it might be 74 nautical miles. Something that is pretty crucial for a sailor. But if I then want to actually plot that route, like I said, I need to know how to cross that shipping lane. I need to know what the tide is doing. I need to know what the wind is doing. I need to know what my boat could be doing at that particular time with that particular wind. So with one click, we give you a route like this, which shows you, okay, you can sail the first bit. You got to cross that TSS at right angles so that you don't upset anybody. It's the law and it's safe. And then in the middle, in this example, there's simply not enough wind to sail. So turn on your engine, and your engine will take you at a particular cruising speed, round you around the shallows, and it will take you, in this particular example, 16 hours and 36 minutes, rather precise. So that's the stuff that we do. And you might wonder, what's the big deal? We've heard other guest speakers today talk about routing problems, salesman issues, etc. And point A to point B navigation, surely that is a solved problem. And to a large degree, it is, right? This is an example of Google Maps telling me how to get to Moscow. Within 232 milliseconds, I get exact details of which roads to take, which junctions to avoid, etc., etc. And it even gives me a nice graph of what it would do if I would take the bus or an airplane. So yes, routing to a large degree has been solved. Obviously, there's examples of problems that we heard earlier today that are difficult, but just from A to B, it's a simple problem. Graph hopper, other solutions, other routing algorithms, all true. But the key thing for most of them, and most of them meaning land-based routing, or even air-based, by the way, it's a graph problem. You have a set of roads across Europe, and every junction you can go left or right, and I know I'm simplifying this, but it's a simple solution of finding the shortest path in that graph. At sea, things are a little bit different. Obviously, one of the things that we like about going out at sea is that I can go anywhere I want, and I can go and change my course anytime I want, assuming I don't run aground. So I can go 360 degrees around, and I can change my course anytime I want. On top of that, the space that I'm in, the water itself, is moving, right? So not only can I move, but I'm already being moved. So all of this makes this computational problem a lot harder. Okay, it's exponentially, we mentioned earlier, sorry, I forget the name of the speaker, talking about how these things can exponentially grow and explode into a very, very tricky computational problem. In this particular case, it's a Euclidean space through which we have to navigate. I found this from Wikipedia, so apologies for my poor graphic solutions. And you might say, well, a sailboat doesn't go in Z direction. You're not going to fly with a sailboat. That's true, but you do have multi-dimensional problems here, right? It's X and Y, but also time, right? Right now, the tide is doing this. In an hour from now, it might be doing something different. So should I wait? Should I go now? Should I go later? How long is it going to take, etc.? All of this is a multi-dimensional problem. And to top it off, we set ourselves the task to do this client side. So unlike doing something with a giant server that can do this for you, as soon as I go out on the water, I want to be able to reroute. If I get off course, I want to be able to know how do I get home safely. And when I'm out there, I probably don't have a connection. So storing and caching the local area on your client device, that's one thing, but now having the algorithm run locally client side is really what makes SavvyNavvy unique. Excuse me. So here's another example of something we do. I'm not sure if this is coming through very well on the share screen, but data here showing the, I think this is coming up to the UK. There's a wind farm there that you probably want to avoid. Sandbanks that you want to avoid. Incidentally, they're green because when the tide is low, they dry out and hence they're green. The blue line is really the course over ground that you want to follow, right? That's where you want to get. But how to do that is by knowing what the tide is doing. So you look at the tide is pushing you one way, therefore your course to steer, the CTS, should be 258. In this particular example, steer that way and you will get to where you need to go. Normally, this is what sailors do manually by looking at where the nearest tidal port is, what is the tide doing, how many hours from high tide am I, what direction is the tide flowing, so therefore I calculate I should do a 258, which is crazy to do manually. I should point out, through all of this, we are not saying get SavvyNavvy, go out to sea and you'll be fine, right? I want to make that very clear. You don't go on the motorway without getting a driving license. You should learn how to do this. You should learn how to do it properly. If your device falls overboard, you should still be able to do this with paper and charts and pen or pencil. But it isn't to say that we can make things easier for you, right? So that's what we're about. So that's roughly what we do. This is how often we've done it so far. I said I left Google 2017 to start this. So since then, we've plotted over 250,000 routes around the world. We have coverage in the UK, the US, all of the Med, some of the Baltics, and expanding, and are heading down to Australia and New Zealand as well. And if you want to see that in a pretty picture, here is what we've done. I believe this is this month, so a nice little heat map, just for the sake of they look pretty, where people have been plotting routes, and you can see people have been even plotting routes on land, obviously in little lakes and inland waterways. So that's really it. That's what SavvyNavvy is about. And thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, fire away.
Okay. Thank you, Jelte. David asks, are you really expected to have mobile phones above decks? I know in normal paper charts, you get shot if they are held on deck.
Well, it depends on the skipper who's going to shoot you, but the paper charts on deck, yeah, you would get shot because you should have paper charts on the boat, and they're the last resort if nothing else, and they're the source of all truth. So if they're on deck and they get wet, or if they fly overboard, you have a problem. That's why you shouldn't have it on deck. Again, we're not a primary source of navigation. A lot of our users have chart plotters on deck, but also a phone, or some people don't have a chart plotter on deck and they don't want to go down below to double check something. So a quick check on the phone, that give them the confidence of where they are, if they're off course or not. And on top of that, a lot of our users really use SavvyNavvy prior to actually heading off. So a lot of it is pre-planning, a lot of it is getting the route ready, at which point you can then export the route and import it into your chart plotter that is on your boat, if you have one. So yeah, would you get shot by a skipper and have a phone on deck? I don't know. Depends on your skipper, I guess.
Right, and you've just answered I was going to ask you whether you can connect SavvyNavvy to the autopilot or.
Yeah, so in short, at the moment, no, and somewhat on purpose. A lot of what we do is aggregate all this data and do the routing for you, but we're not trying to be a chart plotter. Right? The chart plotter on your boat is better to know what is going on because it's hooked into all the telemetry. It knows the wind vane at the top. It knows AIS, which for those of you who don't know is all the other boats around you, which is super useful, and we're not trying to replicate that or replace that. So it's more like a companion, right? We can do this routing, we could do it offline as well if you need to, but you can then export it or connect it to the chart plotter to get it on there. Now we do have plans to do more chart plotter-like features, mostly for people who simply don't have a chart plotter or don't want to buy one because they tend to be quite expensive. But our main core product is that planning phase of planning your trip safely and easily.
Okay, I'm getting flooded with questions for you, Jelte. Sam,
so I hope that's a good thing.
Oh, I think it's a great thing. Sam's asking, can you loosely describe the routing algorithm? I assume it's not something like A*, as you said that you're not graph-based.
Correct, and it's not. Surprisingly, unsurprisingly, it's not as simple as one algorithm. There are a whole bunch of algorithms that we use that we have combined into what we use today. There's a little bit of A* going on there. There's θ* going on for any angle. There is isochrones going on, continuous Dijkstra. It's a little bit of everything put into our own proprietary version with multi-phase solution. So finding the rough ready, it's suboptimal. Obviously, you need to be able to do this quickly. Somebody else mentioned we don't have 14 months to find the best pub. You want to do this in a few seconds. So it's a combination of a whole raft of different known algorithms.
Okay, and someone's just asked, how much does the app cost? Because you're using some proprietary data in this. Give us an idea of what kind of cost is involved in this.
Absolutely. So we have 3 plans. Essential, which I believe today is still called Basic, where our marketing department is changing this. So it's called Essential, Explore, and Elite. Different feature sets. The Essential is going out at the moment for £35 per year. It's an annual subscription. The Explore at the moment is £95 per year, but that might change soon. So you might see that drop a little bit. And the Elite price is £110 a year. So for the differences, Essential is essential. It gives you everything that you need, all the charts. Actually, that's a thing I forgot to mention. A lot of existing solutions out there for charts, Navionics is probably the most well-known, are, I'd like to say, where land-based solutions were 15, 20 years ago. You buy the charts, you update them. In some cases, you have a CF card that you plug in and you have to manually update it, and you're responsible for that. Nowadays, that seems dated. If you look at land-based stuff, you wouldn't expect to go to Google Maps and have to update the maps, right? They're just there. They're always there. They're up to date. We're doing a similar thing. So for the price points I just mentioned, you get all our charts, wherever we have coverage is included. No questions asked, and it's always up to date. So that's your Essential package. For the Explore package, that adds the offline support, the ability to select regions, which will store that chart area and the 4-day weather forecast for offline use, and export to Chart Plotter. Elite gives you additional features like night mode for those who sail at night, satellite mode, and tidal stream overlay, the arrows that you saw.
Okay, and as a sometime sailor, I have to say those sound very, very reasonable in a hobby that is incredibly expensive. It's an elite hobby, unfortunately. And you see the capital people spend on their boats and on the accessories for their boats. Those are very attractive price points.
Yeah.